What if I told you there are 149 companies that have outperformed the S&P 500 for total return in the last 10 years, have at least 10 consecutive years of paying a dividend, and have a 10-year dividend growth rate of over 10%? Would those companies meet your criteria for a spot in a dividend growth portfolio? If so, you're going to want to stick around, because today I'd like to introduce you to the Dividend Knights. One of my very first subscribers saw the direction I was taking on my investment journey and pointed out that a group of companies existed that lined up very nicely with my investing strategy. There's even a spreadsheet that's updated quarterly listing all the companies, which I'll link for you in the comments below if you'd like to take a closer look for yourself. I actually hold 21 of these companies in my personal portfolio, 14 of which are in my big safe dividend portfolio, but more on that later. So let's learn a little bit more about these Dividend Knights. In addition to the rule of tens that I just shared with you, these companies have a mean or average dividend yield of 1.78% and a mean 10-year dividend growth rate of 16.74%. Let that sink in for a minute. And the average 10-year total return of these companies is annualized at 17.12%. Doesn't that sound amazing? In addition, the majority of the Dividend Knights are traded on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ, with 4 companies that are traded on the TSX, which is the Canadian Stock Exchange. These companies all have a market cap of at least $1 billion and at least $500 million in revenue in the last 12 months. I'm going to share some of the top performers in just a minute, but let's look at the sector diversification of the Dividend Knights. You can see this bunch is most heavily weighted in the industrial sector at 30%, followed by financials at almost 21%, with 16% of these companies falling into the consumer discretionary sector. All 11 sectors contained within the global industry classification standard are represented. So who are these companies, and who among them have put up the best performance overall in the last 10 years? As I mentioned earlier, there's a spreadsheet, which is where we are right now, which is updated on a quarterly basis. Right now, it's current through quarter 4 of 2023, but I would anticipate an update sometime in the month of April. I've added a few filters to the spreadsheet so that we can sort through the information, which I'll link for you in the comments. But as we scroll through, you can take a quick look to see which companies are considered Dividend Knights, and then we're going to dive in to a few of the top performers. The first of which is Broadcom Incorporated. The ticker symbol is AVGO. The share price appreciation in the last year has been nothing short of tremendous at 118.83%. The forward PE is 27.75. Now let's check out the dividend growth for Broadcom. In the last year at 12.72%, and if we look at the 3-year growth rate and the 5-year growth rate and the 10-year growth rate, it's pretty impressive overall. It's a solid history of dividend growth because we want growing dividends that are going to help us to outpace inflation. We also want companies that have the cash flow to continue to pay us and grow that dividend. So we're here on the dividend tracker to view the free cash flow chart and see that that has continued to grow. Looking at some additional metrics for Broadcom, we see 13 years of dividend growth. The 5-year dividend growth rate is 19.25%, the payout ratio is 45.09%, and the dividend yield is 1.61%. The next company to have the Dividend Knight distinction is KLA Corporation, and the ticker symbol is KLAC. In the last year, they have also put up some pretty impressive share price appreciation at 79.85%. The forward PE also a little on the high side at 29.59. Looking at dividend growth, we see in the last year it's 13.83%. The last 3 years is 15.71%. The dividend growth in the last 5 years is 12.89%, and in the last 10 years, 12.13%. There are 14 years of dividend growth. The payout ratio is 23.48%, and the dividend yield 0.85%. And back on the dividend tracker, you see the free cash flow for KLA Corporation has continued to rise in the most recent 5 years. And as we scroll down and look at the historical dividends, you can see all of the increases that have happened over the last few years, showing the consistency in growing that dividend. The next company I want to share with you is Comfort Systems USA Incorporated. The ticker symbol is FIX, and they too have had some pretty impressive share price appreciation within the last year at 110.21%. The forward PE is 27.62. Now let's take a look at the growth for Comfort Systems. In the last year, we see a dividend growth rate of 51.79%. In the last 3 years, 25.99%, 5 years, 20.83%, and in the last 10 years, 15.01% compound annual growth rate. There are 11 years of dividend growth. The payout ratio is only 9.67%, and the dividend yield is definitely on the lower side at 0.33%. And back to the dividend tracker, you can see the dividend growth rates on the left-hand chart and the free cash flow there on the right. With some pretty consistent and beefy increases to their dividend over the last couple of years. The next Dividend Knight I want to talk about is Microsoft Corporation. Ticker symbol is MSFT, probably pretty familiar to most of you. In the last year, share price appreciation of 65.84%, forward PE definitely high at 35.35%. Looking at the dividend growth in the last several years, we see 10% in the last year, in the last 3 years, 10.15%, in the last 5 years, 10.2%, and in the last 10 years, 10.86%. I'd say that's pretty consistent. Microsoft has 19 years of dividend growth, a payout ratio of 25.86%, and the dividend yield 0.73%. And here we have the dividend growth rate and the free cash flow for Microsoft. Scrolling down, we can see the historical dividend increases over the last few years. Now let's take a look at the 10-year total return for all of these companies as it compares to the S&P 500. Broadcom puts up the most impressive 10-year total return at 2,587.41%, followed by Comfort Systems at 1,845.84%, then KLA Corporation at 1,473.33%, Microsoft at 1,186.46%, and the S&P 500 putting up a 171.36% total return. In all transparency, I do have all 4 of these companies in my portfolio. KLA Corporation, Comfort Systems, and Microsoft are all in the Big Safe Dividend portfolio, and I have one single share that I achieved through the purchase of fractional shares of Broadcom. And, well, I have 356 shares of SCHD, which if we look at the top 10 holdings, you'll see Broadcom is in the number 1 spot. Well, at least until the reconstitution, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. I'll link to that video in the comments below as well. So what about you? Do you have any of the Dividend Knights in your portfolio? Leave me a comment below and then go and take a peek at this video next.